Matthew 22:34-40. In this passage, the narrative continues within the final week of the Lord's public ministry in Jerusalem. The religious leaders repeatedly approach him with questions designed to test him. After the Sadducees fail in their attempt concerning the resurrection, the Pharisees gather together and send one skilled in the law to question him further. The question: Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? Within the Mosaic covenant, there were hundreds of commandments, traditionally counted as 613, covering moral, ceremonial, and civil aspects of Israel's covenant life. Debates among teachers of the law often centered on which commandments carried greater weight or authority. Jesus answers by quoting from the Hebrew Scriptures. First, he cites Deuteronomy 6:5. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This command formed part of the Shema, the central confession of Israel, recited daily by devout Jews. It summarized the covenant relationship between Israel and their God. Love for God was not merely emotional affection, but covenant loyalty expressed through obedience to the law given through Moses. He then adds a second commandment from Leviticus 19:18. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. This command governed the social relationships within the covenant community of Israel. It called for justice, mercy, and faithful dealings among those who lived under the same covenant arrangement. Jesus declares that these two commandments are the greatest. The first is primary, and the second is like it. Together, they summarize the entire structure of the law. He concludes by stating, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. In other words, everything written in the scriptures concerning Israel's covenant obligations flows from these two foundational principles. The phrase, the law and the prophets, was a common expression referring to the whole body of the Hebrew scriptures. By saying that everything hangs upon these two commandments, Jesus reveals the underlying unity of the covenant law. All the specific instructions given to Israel ultimately point back to wholehearted devotion to God and faithful love toward fellow members of the covenant people. Within the immediate context of Matthew's gospel, this exchange takes place during a period of mounting tension between Jesus and the religious leadership of Jerusalem. The leaders were experts in the law, yet their interpretation and administration of it often emphasized external observance while neglecting the deeper realities to which the law pointed. Throughout his ministry, Jesus consistently exposed this imbalance. The law was never merely a collection of isolated commands, but a revelation of God's righteous standard. Its demands were comprehensive, reaching beyond outward actions into the very center of human thought and intention. To love God with all the heart, soul, and mind describes complete devotion without deficiency. To love one's neighbor as oneself requires a standard of care and concern equal to one's own self-interest. By summarizing the law in this way, Jesus reveals both its unity and its depth. The commandments do not stand independently. They are expressions of a greater covenant purpose. Every statute, ordinance, and instruction given to Israel ultimately relates to these two central principles. This moment also occurs as the covenant era governed by the Mosaic law was reaching its appointed climax. The scriptures had long anticipated a transition in which what was written in the law and the prophets would reach fulfillment. The Messiah stood before them as the one through whom that fulfillment would come. Matthew's gospel repeatedly emphasizes that the events surrounding Jesus' life, death, and resurrection bring to completion what the scriptures had spoken beforehand. The law served a particular role within God's redemptive plan, revealing righteousness, exposing human inability, and directing attention toward the promised deliverer. Thus, when Jesus summarizes the law in these two commands, he is not merely entering a theological debate among teachers. He is revealing the essence of the covenant system itself, its aim, its standard, and the completeness of the devotion it required. In this brief exchange, the Lord brings the entire structure of Israel's scriptures into focus. Love for God and love for neighbor stand as the summary of the covenant law. And upon these two commands, he declares, hang all the law and the prophets.